Back here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand, coming to you from the inner sanctum of the world headquarters of premium beef in Worcester, Ohio. Certified Angus beef. Can you believe that? Brian Schaaf here, meat scientist Diana Clark, Chef Tony Biggs. Hey guys, how are you?
Doing good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How about you?
I am so excited because, at my core, I'm a very lazy person, right? And after this episode, I get to be lazy because we're gonna take a little hiatus, a little 2.5 month siesta, if you will. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. So I'm gonna do that.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
Right? Don't worry, I'll still be around to eat your food, right? Right? So this is the final episode of Season 2. It is a look back at everything that we have been through in really since last September. We've got quite a bit to go through, but I wanted to get you guys back in studio one last time and talk a little bit. First, I wanted to get this one knocked out because Diana, if we waited any longer, baby number 2 is getting here, right?
Yeah,
Congratulations.
we might be in the hospital. Yeah.
Right? Actually, if we keep talking for long enough, Chef Tony might deliver a baby.
For the second time.
Second time.
life.
I've done it the first time. Yeah, David knows all about that if you're listening.
That's right. Chef Tony, by the way, is the most interesting man. He was already the Dos Equis guy, but with beef. But then he talked about how he jumped naked off a bridge in Massachusetts.
It's called streaking. In the 70s, it was big. Remember this? It was a national fad. It reached Cohasset.
It's amazing, right? He delivers children, right?
We jumped off Cunningham Bridge, right?
amazing.
It was a high school graduation. It was pouring rain. And guess what? I used to work at this Hugo's Lighthouse. I've talked about it before. I knew every nook and cranny of Hugo's, so I knew their ladder. We got up there on top, and of course, everybody that's dining in the restaurant, there's a glass window.
Oh my gosh!
And you can see out into the harbor and the lobster pots. And we went 1, 2, 3, held hands, and that was the end of it.
Some people go to Hugo's Lighthouse expecting a very different view.
Yeah, right.
A different experience too.
It's a full moon that night. That's for sure.
It was a full moon, by the way. Yes.
That being said, the biggest change if you go back and listen to Season 1 versus Season 2 is you'll notice the little podcast family has grown even before baby number 2 has arrived. Diana Clark was added to, it was one of those things where we kept consulting Diana throughout Season 1, and then it was like, well, this is stupid. Why don't we just make Diana a permanent guest? So when you hire out, when you contract out services versus hiring somebody on, right? At the end of the day, it makes more business sense to have them on staff, right?
Yeah.
Not mind you, we're not paying.
I was going to say, wait, do I need to get a salary increase?
Tell the truth. She was a referee between you and me. Okay?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Really, just put in the middle to
right.
calm things down.
That's right. But Diana, your first season in the Meat Speak hot seat, you have any favorite moments?
Oh, yeah, definitely the episode with Dr. Steve Smith. That was by far, for me, just geeked out galore on that. The conversation that we got into, how he's able to break that beef fat down to an understandable consumer level, but still just kind of give us that motivation to keep making beef part of the healthy diet. So, yeah, that was awesome.
Well said, right? I always like those episodes where it's like I think I know something coming in, and then I realize I don't know it. I don't know a damn thing, And so that was it. I was like, I'm just gonna shut up and let you guys talk because, yeah,
it was phenomenal.
It's over my head. Chef Tony, how about yourself?
Oh, the prime rib was my favorite. I think just talking about Paul Prudhomme, the late Paul Prudhomme, and giving him accolades on what he did, his Cajun prime rib. And it was so fun to get back into the kitchen and do some different versions and variations of prime rib and the seasoning and all that. And so, yeah, that kind of brought back a lot of memories. I met him a couple of times, and that was great. That was fantastic.
Excellent. It's a great episode, too, because, you got a window into what it'll take to get one of those Lowry's prime rib carts. They go table side.
Yeah.
Did you ever check on the carts? Can we get one of those?
Well, we can't get one unless we're actually talking about putting together sort of an Ocean's 11 style heist because they're stored in Las Vegas right now. I think we can do this. Right?
I think I could fit in the Gary Don part of it. Yeah.
I think that's what we need to do. Is we need to actually have Tony inside the cart.
You would be the waiter with
That's
the
right.
white jacket and the bow tie, and you just wheel me out to the
That's
dumpster.
right, when
and
nobody's
we'll-
looking.
Yeah, that's it. When nobody's looking.
That's
Just
right.
need a forklift to lift it into a truck or something after that.
Oh, we'll drive that sucker all the way back to Worcester, Ohio. So Ryan Wilson, Lowry's, if you do notice one comes up missing,
In the inventory.
just saying you might want to check in Worcester, Ohio. I don't know if I could even choose a favorite one. I love the personality episodes. The one that our buddy Adam Richmond when he was on, which I continue to this day to steal ideas of when I know I'm going to have to eat a lot. Which tonight I'm going to eat actually. Chef Tony's doing a chef's table, and I'm going to be eating there. So I'll probably employ some of Adam's tips for consuming robust amounts of beef prior. So if you see me doing wind sprints in the parking lot about 4 o'clock today, understand this is all about preparation. So, but I'm a fan. On that note, you know what? Let's throw it back to the first episode that Diana Clark was with us, all the way back in late September of 2020. We try not to say 2020 too loud because,
It hurts some people.
the vid, right?
Yes.
All right, so let's throw it back to Diana Clark on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the Certified Angus Beef brand. One of the coolest job titles I think you can possibly get. But tell us about, right? Well, a lot of times we gloss over it. You're a meat scientist. What does that actually mean?
So meat scientists here is essentially we have groups that come in, break down sides of beef, show them where different cuts come from, kind of give them that education, that farm to fork experience, and let them know the differences within muscles. So if you think about like other meat scientist positions out there, so that's what amazes me is that in my world, there's a lot of meat scientists because that we all kind of stick together as a family. There's a reciprocal meat conference that happens every year. We all get together, we nerd out over things. But there's some in research and development side. So they're actually the ones that are there creating some of those products, some of those sausages, some of those lunch meats that you think of. Even if you're going into soup, you think about Campbell's Soup, they have meat scientists on staff that are putting those chunks of beef within the meat. They need to know what's going on within that meat. If you think about your dog, your pet food, okay, pet food has a lot of meat in it. So there's a lot of meat scientists that fall into that career. There's also meat scientists that work more with the live animals because they're the ones that kind of know what the quality of that animal is going to be afterwards. So they're looking to see, okay, what can we do from a nutrition standpoint? How can we make this animal optimal, essentially? And then you even have other meat scientists that are working in more directly with animals in academic, and they're really trying to figure out different ways that we can even help human health by using animals as a predictive model. So it's kind of neat to see the array of science that's out there just within the meat science community. But to me, that was one of the coolest parts about graduate school is any project that we had within the animal science department. Ultimately, they came back to the meat scientists and said, hey, can you guys collect a little bit of additional data on this? And we would always do it because you'd want to see how that impacted overall muscle development and quality of the animal.
And with the addition of Diana Clark to our fold, we decided to go full bore into meat science, starting out with some episodes talking about the naming conventions of beef and how certain names can be confusing or differ based on a number of factors, including something as simple as the region of the country that you call home. Things like a Delmonico is truly a chuck and ribeye. A strip steak is a strip steak, whether it's in New York City, Kansas City, or Omaha, Nebraska. A London broil, it's not a flank steak. It's top round. It's top round. We all got to get on board with this. Of course, we also utilized our meat scientist's expertise to walk us through a series of cuts that can only be procured if you're willing to do the knife work yourself. Moving on, Diana, you're the meat scientist. Where do you want to go next?
Let's talk about the mouse because I feel like that is one that just is overlooked and people maybe even... I think more people know about it than not, but they're just like, yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But really, it's something so simple. And to me, you break down top sirloins, you're going to have that mouse muscle. So if you're food distributor, you got it in your cut shop, you're already breaking down top sirloins to make those sirloin fillets. what are you going to do with that mouse muscle? A lot of times it gets thrown into grinds. If you're not grinding in-house and you're just selling it off as trim, and it's going to go to a cooker of some sort. But we actually have McGregor's up in Canada, Toronto, that they're actually breaking down that top sirloin, and they have people that are purchasing the culotte, they have people that are purchasing the top sirloin fillets, and they have people that are purchasing the mouse muscle as well. Yeah. And it's actually going through, and this is a restaurant that is throughout Canada, Joey Restaurant Group, that actually serves that mouse muscle on their menu. They call it the steak frites, I believe, and it is done phenomenal. And just to think that that's a muscle that typically would go in the grinds, now is served as a center of the plate item. And it is, in terms of tenderness, it's as tender as that culotte. It is definitely a tender piece of meat. Mm-hmm. So I'd go for it every time.
Yeah, but to a point that I think you started on was the idea of, the chuck roll. If you're going to get that whole piece, and takes a little practice to figure out how that comes apart. The sirloin is a really easy piece to take apart, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Very easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, going back to the idea of cut names, right? They nailed the Merlot. The mouse, it must have been an intern.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. We always joke that there was, it was way back when that they were naming the mouse, like 1900s. And so they threw the muscle on the table, and they said, what should we call it? And then a mouse ran on the floor, and so we said, a mouse! And then...
Or they
that's good.
Or they were watching the Disney Channel. It's Mickey Mouse.
Right?
Yeah.
I always like to think of my mice wearing little ping pong ball helmets, riding a little motorcycle underneath my kitchen appliances. But Season 2 also saw us take a deep dive into sausage making, both as a means of utilizing trim and putting some extra dollars on your bottom line. We chatted with the great Arnis Robbins from Evie Mae Pit Barbecue in Lubbock, Texas, on how he puts his prime brisket trim to good use, and then visited with Danielle Bennett, also known as Diva Q, who's one of the only people to ever secure multiple perfect scores in sausage at the iconic barbecue competition, the American Royal. You're making a sausage at home. Like, what's your jam? What's your go-to?
The thing is that I got to spend so much time in Texas, and right when this all started happening, a lovely COVID, I had actually been looking for a second house in Texas, 1 hour outside of Houston, because I don't want to live in Houston. Houston's too expensive and it's too busy. So I was looking for a house 1 hour in the circumference, basically, of Houston. And the reason is, no joke, I love my friends there so much. And Texas has truly, I think, some of the best sausage in the nation. And I'm not putting down anybody else. I don't want anybody to think I'm bashing them. However, the original settlers of Texas, they brought so many incredible recipes for sausage and sausage making. And my go-to at home is kind of like to try to replicate that half link, that half hanged link. And then in addition, figuring out how to do like the cheddar jalapeno, the cheddar hatch. I'm a huge fan of those. I literally have had much sausages and stuff like shipped to my house here, and also experimenting, trying to replicate it. I like the finer grind personally. I really enjoy that textural component for me personally. I think it breaks nicely, and all natural casing always. I don't like the other casings at all. I love natural casings for sausage, whether they're beef or pork. And I like an all natural, pork casing on a beef sausage as well. So, you have options for everything, right? So, but definitely the finer grind, definitely with an ode to Texas always.
If you could deem one as the cut of 2020, our meaty experts would point in the direction of the round. After all, in an industry where margins are already razor thin, then exacerbated by COVID, the round offers a lot of meat for a little price. And while it may need some additional love to get it to a desired endpoint, it can offer a treasure trove of possibilities, like African biltong. Walk us through the method that you go to, first to make this in general, but two, it kind of sounds like the sky's the limit. You're only limited by your own creativity in terms of what you can make this reflect in the way of taste.
So simply, what you're doing is you trimming the outer surface so that it's nice and clean. There's no connective tissue. And that's the great thing about the round. It is solid beef, whichever cut you go to. So then you're going to cut it into about a half, 3/4 inch to an inch thick, depending on how long you want it to take to cure. The thinner you cut it, the faster it will cure. This particular batch that you're looking at over here on Friday afternoon, poured some vinegar on top of it, seasoned with the salt, pepper, coriander, hung it up to dry in a little. When I hang it up to dry, I use like a curing box, but you can put it into your oven, hang it on the racks without the oven on. Just totally let it hang and drip down, straight down, with maybe a little bit of a fan in the beginning just to dry it off so that it becomes dry, and then just shut it off. And by Monday morning, so that was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, this was the end product. And it will continue to dehydrate as it sits a long time. And you talked about just how long can you keep a piece. I accidentally found a piece about 25 years later in a box that ate pretty good. So Jeremy, if you're listening out there, buddy, I have something that lasts longer than 7 years.
This past year also saw us bid farewell to one of the most significant contributors to not just certified Angus beef, but really the beef industry as a whole. Dr. Bob Van Staveren, a meat scientist at the time at Ohio State, was the man credited with developing the scientific standards that became certified Angus beef and the bevy of copycat programs that have followed.
Yeah, I think, without Dr. Bob being a part of the establishment of the brand, the industry probably does look different. The industry, we already knew that prime was a good quality grade. There was prime, choice, good at the time as opposed to select. But we had the grading system, and we knew that eating quality improved as marbling went up. But I would tell you that this was during a time period where the folks in academia and in the industry, I mean, it wasn't anybody in particular that had anything negative that they were trying to accomplish. It just, we were sometimes misreading what the consumer was telling us. They were telling us less fat, less fat, less fat. And I think as an industry, we were looking back and saying that means less marbling, and as long as it's tender, it's fine. And we kind of forgot about flavor and juiciness. And I think Dr. Bob, his genius came in the fact that I think he was one at the time that was interpreting the consumer correctly. When they were saying less fat, that means less external fat. But let's not pull all the goodness out of the product. It still has to taste good for me to want to buy it. And I think that's some of what he was a voice for, a bit of an anchor for an industry. And to your very point, here we find ourselves today that while beef demand was going down during that time period, Dr. Bob really had an idea that came along with that of Mick and Fred Johnson and Harold Ettling and those founding fathers as well, that said, hey, if we want to secure a future for Angus, we've got to secure a future around marbling and quality. And I think today, to your very point, because of that solid opinion and a willingness to defend it, today we've got an entire industry that gets it. Yeah. That gets it, and we're in a much different spot, I think, with consumer demand and ultimately profitability at the cow-calf level, at every level, to be perfectly honest, because a bit of Dr. Bob's foresight.
That was Dr. John Sticka talking, the president of Certified Angus Beef, and one of a long list of notable industry titans who spent time chatting with us. Among those others were two noted culinary icons, Top Chef winner Stephanie Izard from Girl and the Goat in Chicago and Los Angeles, and the man who taught me everything I need to know about how to eat large quantities of food in one sitting, our good buddy, Mr. Adam Richman.
I'm running out of the parking lot, and because remember, the show hadn't aired yet, and I remember we were on Amarillo television, and they called the show Man versus Steak, and I'm like, no. And I remember the male newscaster was like, that's gross. I was like, we're off to a shining start, boys.
All the places that you would expect people would at least appreciate that, Amarillo, Texas.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing is because that's one of the biggest, most iconic challenges is the big Texan, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll even pick you up at the airport in a limo and drive you there for the 72-ounce steak. And it's, you know, the old 96er in the Great Outdoors that John Candy eats is based on that steak.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, I apologize if it's TMI, but that was the one and only time in my life I've ever been asked for a courtesy flush. Not happy about that, but, you know, you got to live life like the truth is true.
That's right. It's real life, brother. I remember we were in Amarillo, Texas, and I've been there many times. I've seen the big statue, and we were with a good friend of ours who used to be the corporate chef of Saltgrass Steakhouse, and another guy was with us who maybe weighed 95 pounds. He was a chef from Barbados who was in with us, and on their last day, Rick, who was with Saltgrass, decided to take Will War from Barbados down to do the Big Tex, and apparently he held his own. So, you know, physical stature isn't everything
at all. That was the thing they kept telling me because, you know, they were lovely, lovely people. But I'll never forget. They were like, "Yeah, a little old lady did it, and she had a piece of pie afterwards and put on her lipstick and walked off the stage." So. And I remember when they brought this thing over and it looked like, the Gutenberg Bible made of beef. And I was just like, oh, man. Because it's called the culotte, you know. So if before they butterfly it, it looks like the entire cone of meat at a gyro place. Like when they're doing the souvlaki. It's that gigantic thing. It's the culotte, it's the thigh, and then all of a sudden, so luckily I kind of knew the muscle groups for primal cut somewhat well, so I knew, because they don't require you to eat the gristle. So I knew that dead smack in the middle was going to be a gristle line, so I cut, but I was trying to be a little shiesty, and I cut out some of the people. I'm like, no, it's gristle. And I remember they came back, and I said, this is not gristle. No, this is not. And they hand me something about the size of like a Costanza wallet, and they're like, no, you're eating, And but they gave me, he did say, here's what's worked for some other people. So they gave me a bunch of different sauces to fight flavor fatigue, which was something that I would come to rely upon. And then he actually, and I wasn't eating, and so my color, I was really wan and pale. And I remember they said, Adam, would you eat a French fry or some shit, please? I'm like, I'm not eating anything until the challenge. And then he said, listen, I'm going to give you a glass of really good Burgundy. And he said, not only will it settle your nerves, it'll make your mouth crave the beef. And it absolutely did. It absolutely did.
Of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the elephant in the room. COVID-19 was underscoring everything that happened in the culinary world over the past year. Restaurants and meat shops everywhere saw obvious ramifications from the crisis, but those problems went all the way back to farmers and ranchers as well. Here's Mark McCulley, Chief Executive Officer of the American Angus Association. If we could change gears here, I wanted to bring up a topic that I had heard a couple times, and actually it's top of mind because I was in Chicago recently and I heard it there too. Was this idea that 2020, right? If you'll remember, there was a point where packing plants had to slow down and pinch production a little bit because of COVID happening, and beef prices went through the roof. There was a you can look back at charts. I mean, and years from now, we can look back at 2020 and be like, I know what happened there when we see the spike. There is this notion that the farmers and the ranchers had a really good year financially because beef prices to the end users got really, really high. Not exactly the case, correct?
Not exactly the case, and in fact, maybe not at all the case. What we saw was a market that was doing its job. That's the job of markets is to rationalize supply and demand. And again, when the plants had to shut down because of COVID, when distribution shut down, when the supply shut down, and there was only this very limited amount of product coming out the spigot, right? The market did what it's supposed to do, and it rationalizes that, right? And so the prices went through the roof. And so that's what happened. But yeah, know that those dollars, unfortunately, didn't. That wasn't this big windfall that came back into cattlemen's pockets. In fact, it's been a really rough year. It's been in some regards, as I talk to so many of our members, whether from coast to coast, wherever, but so many of our ranching partners that are in again, think ranching country, right? The Dakotas and Nebraska and Montanas and Texas and Oklahoma. This idea of social distancing, not a new concept for them, right? They've been doing that for a while. The market though has and they're essential employees, right? They the cows don't take a break from needing hay hauled and things taken care of on these operations go 365 period, right? And so in some regards life didn't change maybe a lot, but this market got really it just got so unpredictable. And the reality is when there was this backlog, when the processors couldn't work, right, then the finished cattle couldn't come out of the feedlots. So we got this backlog of cattle finishing in the feed yard, which put more back pressure back onto the cow-calf producers, that there's feeder cattle that would typically be flowing into the feed yard. There was no room yet. We had to kind of work through this glut of supply. We ended up in the feed yard. So actually feeder calf prices were suppressed through that and still are. And so that's the reality.
Looking back at all things Meat Speak Season 2, taking a little tiptoe through the tulips of the past season, although I don't actually tiptoe through tulips because, means
who sang that song? Who sang that song?
That was Tiny Tim, wasn't it?
Tiny Tim,
yeah,
exactly.
Right.
With a ukulele.
Yeah,
right?
I own a ukulele.
I saw him on Carson, back then.
Did you really?
Yeah, he started on Carson, and he sang that song.
Yeah, and he was
to the tulips.
I always like Tiny Tim because it's one of those ironic names because he wasn't tiny at all, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Was he a one-hit wonder as well? One hit?
I always think that's like subjective because some people were probably like, I loved all of his stuff. It's better to be a one-hit wonder than a no-hit wonder.
True.
I'm just going to throw that out there. Looking back at all things Season 2 of the Meat Speak podcast, Brian Schaff here with meat scientist Diana Clark and Chef Tony Biggs. Guys, we're about to go on a 2.5-month hiatus before we relaunch with Season 3 at the end of September. Diana, we'll start with you. What are your plans?
What to talk about, or my plans for the next 2.5 months?
For the next 2.5 months.
Have a baby.
Have a baby. Oh,
yeah, that's pretty much it, actually.
That's funny because I was gonna do that too, but I've been in my third trimester since 2002, and one of these days.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna be a beautiful child.
Well,
Well, I'll tell you what we will do is actually over the next 2.5 months, we're actually just going to put out fresh episodes, and it's just going to be sounds of Diana Clark sleeping. Chef Tony, what are your next 2.5 months looking like?
Have we been rebooked from management for another season? Have we done that?
I think our agent's on it.
The agent's on it?
Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh. Okay, well, let's cross our fingers.
Right.
yeah, I know. I'm a little nervous about that
I
one.
know.
Next month, next season, I want green M&Ms only.
How about peanut with peanut?
Yeah, I'm pro peanut.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What
No, I
about
think-
almonds?
I can get on board with the
Okay.
almonds.
I
The
like
only
almonds,
M&M that I have yet to really say that I've enjoyed is the coconut one. And I've got a thing with coconut. It's just not my thing. Yeah.
I like coconut.
I love the M&Ms, but the coconut one just isn't doing
I
it for
never
me.
had that one.
Yeah. It's all right. It's
Wow,
all right.
Okay.
Right? Chef Tony, what's your summer looking
I
like?
don't know, man. I'm just, hey, I wish both of you the great summer here, and Di, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Brian, eat lots of burgers.
On
Okay,
it.
I know you're going to. And I think I'm just going to be dreaming about Grand Cayman in January. So maybe we'll do the
that's
podcast
nice.
then, right? When it opens back up.
It's going to be glorious.
Yep.
Gonna be glorious.
it.
2022, January, right?
2022,
You can-
January.
Is it too soon to book your tickets?
It's a little too soon.
Right.
Probably going to do it in about a month. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you want to hang out with Chef Tony on the beach in Grand Cayman
on down.
in January,
Beautiful.
in a Speedo.
Speedo, I
Yeah.
don't look good in a Speedo. I think I've got some really good I bought some new pants, Brian. Okay,
a nice pair
they're
of
octopus
slacks.
pants. Okay, octopus.
Octopus
Yeah,
pants.
they're like really wild. Okay, all over the place. Hey, we're down in Cayman. It's
And
like
then a
fish,
solid
right?
colored shirt on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it
a
looks
red
nice.
shirt
Yeah.
and some my suspenders. That's the
Ooh,
new
nice.
look.
I
right?
like it. You do look good with
Yeah,
suspenders.
and then my grilling gloves, and I'm going to be ready.
I like it.
Gonna
I
do
like
fish
it.
and beef at the same
I
surf
feel-
and turf. Right?
I feel like if you put a top hat on there, you've got kind of a ringmaster thing to it.
Ooh.
yeah, I know. Hey, yeah.
I'm just saying that idea's been kicked around before.
Oh, it has.
Right. Little event in Las Vegas, I'm just saying. On that note, we appreciate all of you for tuning into the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand, located in the far reaches of Northeast Ohio, at the north end of Amish country, at the south end of, I don't know, what's above us? Medina? Cleveland suburbs. Please know, if this is your first time tuning into the Meat Speak podcast, you can catch us across all of your major podcasting platforms, or by going back to visit certifiedangusbeef.com/podcast. Chef Tony Biggs, meat scientist Diana Clark. Guys, in 2.5 months, we'll be back. But until then, get lots of sleep, drink lots of liquid, eat lots of burgers, and,
Have a great summer.
have a great summer, y'all.
Be safe.